You showed one area where I don't know if it was an outpost or a settlement, but the garbage was just tossed down in the Palestinian village.
Yeah, this is another thing. I mean, actually, Ariel settlement, the second largest settlement in the West Bank, actually dumps its trash on. It's located on a hilltop and dumps its trash down a hill into a Palestinian area. So people have to actually leave their homes because there's kind of trash tumbling down into the village. Hebron, the Hebron Old City, is another incident where settlers have actually forced families out of their homes in the top floors of Palestinian homes in the Old City and actually throw trash down into the market area. So people have basically abandoned their stores because there's this trash problem. So environmental issues are kind of something that people don't necessarily know about with regard to the occupation, but it's a major issue. There was actually a village that I worked in called Wadi Kana, where it's a small village surrounded by settlements on the hilltops around it, where the settlers have actually started to flow their sewage down into the village from different hilltops all around, such that the village itself, Wadi Kana, is where there's actually a river flowing through fresh water, which is so precious here in the desert, in the territories. And basically the water is now, urine and feces, and people can't drink it anymore. People have had to abandon their homes because of it. These environmental issues, as tragic as what's happening to the actual population, hopefully, in time, justice can come, peace can come, healing can come. But the environmental issues, this water will never be clean. The trees that are uprooted will never be back. It's these things are permanent.
You had a number of pictures of the wall, and we've talked about that a number of times on our program. But you had two rather stark examples of a city, Qalqilia, and surrounded by a wall, and a house surrounded by a wall. Could you talk about that a bit?
Sure. So Qalqilia is an entire Palestinian city, more than 50,000 people who are living basically surrounded by a 25-foot concrete wall. It looks like a ghetto or an open-air prison. But an even more striking example is my friend Munira, who lives outside of her village, has ended up on the Israeli side of the wall. A lot of people think the wall is being built on the border between Palestine and Israel, but actually 80% of the wall, is going into the territories, annexing actually land onto the Israeli side, such that Palestinians living in this land that's being annexed into Israel, suddenly there's a wall between them and their communities and the rest, most Palestinian communities. And so my friend Munira, her and her family, when they look outside their front door, there's a 25-foot concrete wall separating them from their village. And the thing is, because they're on land that is now sort of by default Israel, there's a wall behind them as well, because it's separating them from the nearest Israeli settlement. And on the right and left side of their house, there are two more walls that are separating them from the land that has now been annexed into Israel, where people are moving into. As a Jewish person, I could move on to this land, but meanwhile, this family has lost all the land around their homes and is basically encaged by these four walls.
Let's close with talking about some of the demonstrations that you witnessed. Could you tell some things about them?
Sure. A lot of people, one of the things I like to really stress is that there is a kind of resistance going on to the occupation, and a lot of people assume it's just a violent resistance movement. We hear about the suicide bombs on TV and in the papers all the time, but what we don't hear about is the sort of daily non-violent resistance going on. People going to their land even though they could be shot by settlers, by violent settlers, or they could be harassed by soldiers. People staying in their homes even though they're under demolition order. People going to their fields even though their sheep could be poisoned. I mean, this is a kind of nonviolent resistance happening every day. And then demonstrations, people going to protest what's happening. People chanting cheers, and we just don't hear about these. The only thing that makes the papers is like the carnage, the death, but that's not what the average Palestinian is going through every day. Many of them have not lost hope. They continue to this struggle, and it just never makes it into the media.
And you mentioned demonstrations where Israeli Jews participated on the side of Palestinians.
Absolutely. A lot of the work that I did was alongside, was sort of Palestinian-led, but alongside Israeli activists as well, who are very active in villages and in these demonstrations as well.
Let's close with a mention of a couple of websites for people who are interested in these things. The women's group that you toured with, could you tell us about that website?
Actually, I'm touring alone, but the group that I worked with was a group called the International Women's Peace Service. IWPS.info is their site. And in addition, there's my own website, which is oninthemiddleeast.com, and there you can just see what kind of work I've been doing and some of my photographs and stuff.
And they're terrific photographs. Thank you very much.